16 players entered, only 2 remain. That's right, it's time for the grand finals here at the 2015 HearthStone World Championship. My name is Ferdinand, and I'm joined on the caster desk with Brian Kibler and Preparian, and we couldn't be more excited to bring you guys the conclusion of a year's worth of journeys. Brian, what's it like being here at the grand final stage?
I mean, it's been incredible. I was not casting the last 12 matches, but I couldn't tear myself away from the screen. We've already had some incredible games today, and I'm really looking forward to this match.
Yeah, the games today have been wonderful, but some people don't really understand just how long of a journey it is. I mean, you know, all the players here, they've taken their time every single day, every single month to get those ladder points, to qualify for the tournaments, to do well in the tournaments, you know, to make it to the top 16, to make it to the top 8, down to 4, and now we're down to 2.
That's right, but only one can be the champion. We've had a great 2 days of competition with the people joining us from all over the world. It comes down to this. Let's introduce our first player.
Hotform, representing Canada!
Now, Hotform, I know we just had a short conversation as you emerged victorious from the booth, but you're about to head right back in. What is on your mind right now as you head into this final match?
I guess I should say I already feel like I've accomplished a lot to get here, and win or lose, I'm really proud of my progress.
Fantastic. It sounds like the fans out there are proud of you too, but they would sure like to see a victory. Good luck in your match, and now let's welcome to the stage player 2.
Ostkaka, representing Sweden!
Welcome Ostkaka to the stage. Ostkaka, this is simply the most important match in your life. How are you feeling right now?
I'm a little bit nervous, but this, yeah, as you said, it's the grand finals for the World Championship. I'm here to represent Europe, Sweden, and Navi. So I'll do you proud.
All right, guys, you can go to the middle of the stage right now, shake your hands, go to your booth, and good luck.
All right, some quick words with the competitors. It's all business. I mean, Hearthstone is fun at times, and we want to be relaxed, but this is a lot on the line here.
I mean, it's fun to play games, you know, casually with your friends. It's still fun to compete in a stage like this, but those nerves, they can get to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I took some time backstage to sit with each of the players. It seemed to me like Ostkaka was a little bit more, you know, calm, very composed, probably because I think he might have a little bit of the edge in the matchups, and that's helping the situation a little bit. And all these little small edges, all in that you can get, are going to help you just that little bit that you need to succeed.
Yeah, there's a point earlier today where Hotform was sort of asking out loud, he's like, does it matter if I win? It's like, well, yeah, you beat the world champion. That matters. That matters a lot.
It matters almost to everything. You talk to Firebat, he says it is the most life-defining experience that he's had in his entire career, in his entire lifetime. And to some people, winning the World Championship is everything. They don't play for the prize money necessarily. They play for the glory, the fame, the prestige of being the HWC 2015 champion after playing for many months, some through ladder, some through tournaments, some entering at the last minute and getting their journey all the way to this point. It's really exciting. 2 stories stand out to me immediately. The fact is that we have, once again, Europe versus North America at large. That's always a fun rivalry that I want to see who has the definitive edge. And the second thing is, these 2 players were the only 2 players to bring Rogue, a class that people consider to be very weak. What's up with that, Crip?
Well, Rogue does seem to be a class that struggles a little bit on ladder, but as we've seen so far in the tournament, that the players who have just brought the 3 of the strongest decks just hasn't really worked out for them. They've been countered by a lot of the counter setups. Vice was very, you know, very prominent with his, and Ostkaka has a very similar lineup that also worked just as well. So the players with more refined strategies than just bringing your top 3 decks have advanced, and yeah, Rogue seems to be a pretty good counter class to the better decks out there.
Yeah, not to mention that Paladin has been awfully quiet this tournament, stopping in the semifinals, and it wasn't even a secret mysterious challenger Paladin. Why do you think that is, Kibler?
The last time we saw a mysterious challenger was in the quarterfinals. Both players who brought Secret Paladin were eliminated in the quarterfinals, and I think that decks like the ones these 2 players have brought are very strong against those decks. We see things like the Blade Flurry and Fan of Knives clear from the Rogue decks. Freeze Mage, structurally very strong against Paladin decks that don't really have all that much burst damage. So I think that both these players chose their lineups very well and were able to defeat all the Secret Paladins they came across.
That is really fascinating indeed, especially because you're telling me that there is ways to kill those Paladins. I can't wait to see Ladder
True story.
the next couple of days. And it's time to find out who is going to begin their journey to become the world champion. Make sure you're hashtagging HWC 2015 and let everyone know that the Grand Finals begins now.
Oh, this is going to be an explosive match. There's going to be Freeze Mage versus the crazy Tempo Mage of Hotform. Now, a few players brought Tempo Mage to the tournament in the round of 16, but Hotform was the only one to emerge with the deck. And it has been a pretty rough journey in some games, but more so recently in the games I've seen in our finals here at BlizzCon, it has had quite a good success.
I mean, we saw Hotform just have an incredible comeback with his Tempo Mage deck against Kuno and his Paladin deck. You know, those Flame Wakers just firing off shot after shot and killing things everywhere. Not really going to be a key card in this matchup, but definitely a defining card for the deck.
I feel like the Flame Waker does actually push for a ridiculous amount of damage. It's kind of like the knife juggler of the deck. It's where if it gets a little bit out of control, it's like, oh hey, I have way too little HP for this amount of mana crystals.
I mean, it is a card that in this matchup, it's not really going to have the ability to clear the board like it does against Muster for Battle, things like that, but it effectively is +2 spell damage for all of your spells you're aiming at your opponent's face when they have no minions in play. And Freeze Mage, not a deck that particularly has many minions.
It doesn't have many minions, but the minions that they do have can have dramatic impact with Doomsayers, with cards like the Emperor Thorson reducing the cost. Ostkaka's going to be looking for that early game card draw, though. What you want to do as the Freeze Mage, you want to ultimately keep your hand count high and keep the board count low. And then you stall for as much time as you can to get that damage burst and finish the game.
Well, the Frostbolts are really good cards. They're ones that kind of allow you to stall. Often we see players coin out just their most powerful 2-drop when they're playing an aggressive deck. So Ostkaka did have the 2 Frostbolt answers, but as it so happens, Hotform has a more slowly developing hand here with the Flame Waker, but he actually decides to push it out as fast as possible.
Yeah, the key for the Tempo Mage deck in this matchup is to apply pressure, able to get the Freeze Mage decks in the position where it has to use its for things as removal, like Frostbolt to kill things, rather than being able to save those Frostbolts up for a lethal burst damage thanks to Alexstrasza. We do see Hotform here with some of his much less effective cards in this matchup in his hand. Those mirror images, great against decks like Paladin, which he just faced in the semifinals, but not so good here.
That's right, but I mean, they do still serve as 2 face damage. That is an arcane shot worth of damage for the mage in this scenario.
And every point of damage really does end up mattering here because the Freeze Mage will end up trying to pile as many life points as possible. So if you can get early game pressure and damage in, then Freeze Mage might have to alter their place to survive as opposed to kill.
We do see an interesting card picked up by Hotform there, the Nexus Champion Sarad. That's a kind of a defining card of his particular style of Tempo Mage deck. We've seen some pretty cool spells come off that throughout this tournament.
There have been some pretty cool ones, but I don't think we've seen any like really game-winning, crushing ones. So the card hasn't had its time to shine quite yet, but perhaps this game.
Yeah, there's many things that can be pulled, which we don't really think about. But for example, Flare just happens to be a spell, and you can pull it for the Nexus Champion Sarad.
We did see Hotform get a Tree of Light off of
Tree of Light.
A pretty exciting one.
Didn't work in that
burst
game,
down by Freeze Mage.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it works both ways. Maybe he doesn't want to kill the Freeze Mage, or doesn't want to give that Freeze Mage that chance to live.
I am surprised to see the Acolyte here. It does seem like it's going to draw 1 extra card, which is really the goal of the Acolyte. It's going to draw 1, but you want to draw an extra 1, and sometimes you want to save it until 5 mana crystals to be able to ping it yourself. But here against the Flame Waker, I think Ostkaka just thinks it's not going to happen, and if it does, it's going to come at the cost of a Frostbolt, which I guess he's willing to do.
Yeah, the burst damage from the Tempo Mage is one of their key elements in their ability to really beat the Freeze Mage deck. They need to be able to save up enough damage that they can break your Ice Block and then still burst down the following turn. So things like Frostbolt, like Fireball, they're actually very valuable for the Tempo Mage in this matchup. And we do see Mirror Image come in effectively as Arcane Shot, get those 2 damage in. Those 0/2s not really going to have an impact.
That's still pretty good. I mean, so far we've seen 3 spells played. The Flame Waker has done 6 bonus damage alongside the 2 that it has attacked twice already. So it's making a pretty good presence, more so than I thought it would being coined out.
I think so too, and one thing that I do like that Hotform prioritized that previous turn is card draw. One of the things that you can effectively do is make Tempo Rage run out of resources because it's so spell heavy. All all those things might all in for damage, and then you have nothing left, and you're left drawing one card to kill your opponent. Instead, he's keeping his hand count pretty high, so he has many resources to fight a long game.
Yeah, he does have that Azure Drake in his hand as well, and just squeezing the extra couple of damage out of the Flamewaker, that's important. If he doesn't have a Flamewaker in play when he does play Mirror Entity, or Mirror Image rather, it basically does nothing.
We see a lot of spells being able to play this turn, though. He's actually able to play the Unstable Portal to Frostbolt and another Mirror Image if he wishes. That's 6 more little pings from the Flamewaker.
Yeah,
that is so much more than I thought it would do.
What's in the box? Ooh, that's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Tournament Medic with the Inspire Heal Your Hero for 2. That can allow him to possibly, makes a surprise burst of healing to get himself out of lethal damage range.
Yeah, healing definitely stalls out the game a lot, and in this matchup against the Tempo Mage, usually the game is played, the Tempo Mage is doing all it can to put pressure on the Control Mage so it can't do the flip strategy from controlling the game to being the aggressor and trying to close it out. And when you have just a little bit of healing, you often are just out of range and end up winning the game as a result.
The flip side is, it's not the most aggressive card. So one of those things is, as you do drag on the game, one of those things that you have to be concerned is, outside of that Tournament Medic, what do you have to heal yourself? Because ultimately, healing 2 per turn is not really what Mage is truly concerned about. It's about, can you be too far out of the life range total for it to burst you down?
Yeah, the big key is that it can just potentially open up a window for Hotform, where not necessarily he just out-heals the damage the Freeze Mage is capable of, but out-heals the single turn burst while he still is able to buy time to actually finish Ostkaka off.
That's right.
All right, well, this is a pretty tough turn for Ostkaka. I mean, he's facing a pretty full board, but it doesn't look threatening, even though that Flamewaker has basically hit past the halfway point.
There are 5 minions in play and 2 power. It's kind of a bot low.
It's a pretty low amount of damage.
It's a deceptively low amount of damage.
Right, but exactly, because there is a lot of potency with things like Fireball on the other end. Ostkaka, if he plays Emperor Thorson, reduces his hand count by 9 total mana, and also has opportunities for free Ice Lances. That could be just too much damage to overcome.
Yeah, the big key here for Ostkaka with that Emperor is getting the reduction on the Frostbolts and Ice Lances specifically. It's great in everything, but it's particularly powerful in your cheap spells because it allows you to weave them in with basically anything else you want to do, particularly something like Archmage Antonidas.
That's right. And
Pretty tough decision here.
What do you think about decision to Emperor?
Yeah, the Emperor is very threatening, as you guys talked about, but you're just so close. When you're in those very close moments, sometimes you feel like you want to control the game to stay as the aggressor and not take any risks. But sometimes it's very difficult to understand what risks you really are taking against the Freeze Mage.
Because they could be anything. It could just be more secrets. It also could just be direct damage, which mounts up to enough damage to kill you. One of those things is like, I was counting if Ostkaka drew Thanos, would he have enough to kill his opponent next turn? I mean, those are all things that you have to be accountable for. But he does end up blinking and saying, you know what, I'm not going to try to play with fate here. I'm going to kill his Emperor, take it a little bit slower. That's been the MO so far. Now Ostkaka does have ways to clear the board and develop some stuff onto the board with the Scientist or the Loot Order.
Yeah, Ostkaka also knows that Hotform has now used one of his Frostbolts and one of his Fireballs. So his ability to do burst damage is greatly reduced.
So you think, until there's a card called Archmage Antonidas.
There's Archmage, there's Nexus Champion.
Well, he can build up to those, though. That's in the immediate future, his only real threat is 1 copy of Fireball and 1 copy of Frostbolt. Ooh, speaking of Archmage, and speaking of an excellent card with also reduced cost from Emperor last turn, Ostkaka can potentially, he can play Archmage Antonidas, fire off Frostbolts and Ice Lances, and generate 3 Fireballs this turn.
It does feel a little bit early to really go for an aggressive push right now, though. It feels just a little bit too early. Your opponent's at 29, you're at 17, you have no secrets up right now.
But you can activate the Mad Scientist and then put Archmage with direct damage into your hand and just burn your opponent for victory.
I mean, if he does, say he plays Archmage and Frostbolts and kills the Flamewaker.
Or just all face.
Yeah, or potentially that. Well, he does want to potentially keep himself out of range of dying himself. I think that if he doesn't remove the Flamewaker, he risks the possibility of there being burst damage and then the Flamewaker trigger is going into his face.
Sure, makes sense. And he can make up a little bit of that damage too with the Scientist. Training it in though and holding on to the second Ice Lance, so that way he can get some additional burst. I like that because free Ice Lance is really powerful with Alex Straza, making sure that you can follow up a combination attack by going up to 17.
Do you think it's time to play the medic here? You absolutely can, but I feel you want to save that card for when your opponent goes all in with Alistraza, just to counter it a little bit.
And right now, Hotform is at 29, so it wouldn't really be particularly impactful, but Ostkaka, how much burn does he have in his hand? 3 Fireballs, Frostbolt, Ice Lance.
25.
That's very, very close.
It's close, but it does take multiple turns. That is the biggest draw possible, the Alex Straza.
Yeah, there's a couple of charges that will definitely accelerate Ostkaka's clock here. He doesn't have a ton of damage, but those make it add up a lot faster.
It actually feels like Hotform is going to have a lot of trouble surviving, let alone closing out this game.
We'll see, though. Champion Sarat could swing things with one draw of a spell.
Not quite what you're looking for. I don't believe he's running any of the neutral demons. So it's unlikely. And Imp Master's Imps.
Oh, you're right. The Imp Master creates more Imps. Yeah, I guess. He's a reasonable deck builder, not playing those cards. And it is confirmation, by the way, that Ostkaka does have Ice Block up because Alex Straza... Oh, sorry, because the Ice Block is untargeted. So therefore, Alex Straza seems to be the likely play this turn.
So he's Alex Straza, Hotform face from the 15.
And this is the game-ending opener from the Freeze Mage. This is the point where Hotform is absolutely on the defensive. And I think he's going to need a spectacular card from the Nexus champion to even be in this game right now.
Yeah, some removal option would be good, but he can use Demon Heart to kill off this minion, along with the Water Elemental.
And with the reduced Fireball and the Frostbolt and Blood Mage, Ostkaka can actually play Blood Mage, 2 Fireballs, Frostbolt, and Ice Lance next turn. That's just way too much damage.
Yeah, and I think that's it.
I don't see a way out of this for Hotform here. He can remove this Alex Straza, but he cannot get himself out of burn range thanks to the reduced cost burn spells Ostkaka has in his hand.
But at the same time, I think Hotform played the game very well. He chose his aggressive spots. He could have been more aggressive, but it wouldn't have been aggressive enough in that situation. So I think he gave his best chance to win. As it so happens, Ostkaka just has too much burn. And that's going to wrap up the game.
That's right. Game number 1 starts out with a Freeze Mage victory. And Hotform will have to go back to the drawing board as his Tempo Mage falls. What an important Game 1 win here for Ostkaka.
And look at that crowd.
Yeah.
People go crazy.
I can hear through these headphones. I can hear the roars of the crowd, the thunder sticks going off. It's an incredible environment here right now.
Thunder sticks are really one of the best inventions in eSports.
They're fantastic. You see a bunch of other pro players, many of the competitors in this tournament up on the stage there, definitely being, like to be part of this big moment.
Absolutely, because again, this will be the 2nd world champion that we've had, and 2 of these players, especially with Ostkaka, has just the utmost respect from his peers. You look at players like Ostkaka for the entire year, and people pegged him as one of the best players that were not known, or people didn't really hear about. From you talk to his teammates like 6-0 and a few other people, they always said Ostkaka is like one of the best players in the world. Even according to ladder statistics, Ostkaka was one of the best ladder players this year in the entire world, finishing always in the top 10 and getting a lot of points.
Yeah, he's a player who for a very long time has had the utmost respect of his peers. He hasn't really had tremendous breakout tournament finishes, but this is exactly that.
Yeah, and at the same time, on the other side of the board, we have Hotform, who is more of a relaxed player. He does take the game pretty seriously, but he really just plays to have fun, plays to show his stream, good quality entertainment, and just tries to keep it positive. And it really shows, even with not that competitive of an attitude, playing it smart and being very persistent to trying to get what you want and get you in pretty high up places.
Yeah, Hotform plays a bunch of weird decks. If you ever tune into a stream, he's always trying some pirate version of something. Some, Wisp Hobgoblin version of another thing, and it's like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, I'm having fun with HearthStone.
Yeah.
And yet he's also here in the World Championships trying to fight for his tournament life. It's going to be difficult to try to overcome a warrior, but this is not the usual warrior you've come to expect it, Kibler.
Yeah, Hotform, he is actually faced a number of warriors throughout this tournament. He was able to emerge victorious against matchups that were much more difficult than Ostkaka's Patron Warrior. Ostkaka is playing the more mid-range style of new Patron Warrior since the change to Warsong Commander. It's much more of a board presence focused deck, not really with as much armor gain that makes it so difficult for the Rogue to punch through, which is going to make cards like Blade Fury that we see in Hotform's hand much more effective.
In fact, Hotform is actually at the BlizzCon finals at all just because of an unbelievably bad matchup against Nelio's Control Warrior that he beat with this very rogue deck. So we put him at like maybe 20%, maybe even less than that in that matchup. And somehow, on the very last few cards in the entire rogue deck, he had just enough damage to seal out the game. So, you know, this does seem favored for Warrior, but it is by no means a certain victory.
It's a good point. Many people peg Freeze Mage versus that Warrior as one of the worst matchups in the game. A lot of people put the second worst matchup as the Rogue. So very impressive for Hotform to be at tournament elimination, to beat that Warrior deck and come here to the finals, but he's again in a similar spot. Can he overcome a Warrior deck? It is better though, because this Patron Warrior deck is much more mid-range centric, playing minions to try to ultimately get more aggressive as the game develops, but you're playing very slow early on.
And the minions aren't that useful against Rogue a lot of the time with such efficient removal.
Well, we do see two minions that are very good against Rogue in Ostkaka's hands right now. The Piloted Shredder, the Lotheb, even the Dr. Boom. These are all minions that can give the spell-based and tempo removal-based Rogue deck a lot of problems.
It's funny you mentioned the Dr. Boom. I feel like the only reason Hotform even had a chance against some of these slower decks, particularly the Control Warrior that he beat, was because he's actually running the big Game Hunter in his Rogue deck, which is somewhat of an unusual tech because most of these Rogue decks have been mostly tailored to beat the aggressive side of the game. But in this case, Dr. Boom, I guess there's Grommash as well, but Grommash usually comes down when one player is about to lose. But it makes that target. In the prior version of the deck, there was no target for BGH.
It was actually the Game Hunter killing Nelio's Grommash that won Hotform his ticket to this event.
Yeah, that's right.
It may not have been revealed up to that point either.
Well, Ostkaka here has a very easy hit onto the Pilot Shredder. I think Hotform was disappointed not seeing a minion he can easily backstab with the Violet Teacher last turn, but he's just going to have to live with the consequences. Ostkaka also is going to be looking for ways to eventually get some good board flood with Patron. It's leading up to a good Dr. Boom.
I think a Whirlwind here would be such a big deal. He has those crazy tempo Dread Corsair Pirates. He's got the Battle Rage. He's got the Grim Patron. So many creatures he can play suddenly. And if the Battle Rage lands on the board with multiple injured minions, it's going to be massive. It's the game.
Here we see Ostkaka play out the 2 copies of Dread Corsair. It does leave himself potentially vulnerable to a Blade Flurry from Hotform, but Blade Flurry is so key at removing Grim Patrons that I think Ostkaka is willing to make that sacrifice.
In fact, I think he might even prefer it, depending on how Hotform's hand looks, which is not very Grim Patron proof. He's got a bunch of Fan of Knives. He does have a Blade Flurry, but he just used up his dagger, which had that 3 attack on it.
I think there's a pretty good chance we're going to see the Vile Teacher come out here. If you wait too long with that card, the Warrior's going to pick up some cards and things are not going to go too well. But it looks like he does hold off another turn.
It is interesting because you don't see a Death Spite, which is usually the biggest reason not to do anything. And in fact, Hotform is spending all these spells, which ends up meaning that his Violet Teacher won't get those additional 1/1s. But I can understand why. If you leave up any of those Red Corsairs and you play Violet Teacher, it dies. So he wants to make sure that the Violet Teacher can not only generate minions, but also stick to the board.
Well, it's going to be forcefully delayed one more turn now that Lotheb hits the board.
Yeah, Lotheb is so powerful against the Rogue deck because it has so many spells, but Hotform picks up an excellent play there with that Piloted Shredder.
That was so big. He didn't have anything else really to do other than Violet Teacher.
Yeah, which would have just died,
and it would have just
no
died.
value to that Lotheb.
He's going to get a bit punished here. It's unlikely that anything coming out of the Shredder is going to challenge the Lotheb, and I believe the weapon is just going to take care of the first Shredder base.
Sure. And then you got Dr. Boom, one of the most problematic cards for Rogue to deal with in the game of HearthStone. How does Hotform fight back against this? He needs his big game hunter soon.
Whoa, no big game hunter in time for Dr. Boom. What am I watching right now?
It's really unusual. It almost feels scripted with the way some of those draws lined up, right? Like big game hunter just on time for Dr. Boom.
All right, well, the Vile Teacher does finally come down. It is in a pretty good spot here as...
Oh, interesting.
Wow. I don't believe that is going to make any effect of this game, because that is such a threatening card with an army of 1/1 minions.
It really is.
Yeah, no doubt. Each of them become mini wolf riders.
Oh,
That was terrific.
that was actually very, very good for Hotform, able to absorb the damage with the totem here, which Ostkaka still really needs to get off the board.
Now, Hotform is considering being a bit restrained with the coin here. While it does develop more on the board, he can develop the 1/1, he can develop the deckhand if he wants as well. I think he's really just playing around Whirlwind here.
Yeah, the deckhand does get that bonus damage as well. He can't clear the boom, but he can be more aggressive and make sure that the boom has less health, so they doesn't have to worry too much. SI's agent can clean up the following turn.
All right, well, Battle Rage can be used here. There could be a Grim Patron Enrage Battle Rage turn from Ostkaka, and if he does draw into Whirlwind, that would be devastating.
Yeah, that would be so big. He would have a board full of patrons. His opponent doesn't have any opportunity to use Blade Flurry with spell or with any damage to make sure to combine it. It'd be really tough.
Just goes with Battle Rage for 2 here. Finds Cruel Taskmaster and Slam. A lot of options still.
That still is a board clear, I believe, because he's got ways to pierce a lot of damage. Slam on the Violet Teacher, axe it down, and then you got Cruel Taskmaster and Armor Smith and Enrage to help clean it up if you want to go that far.
There's
Oh,
Whirlwind.
if he did do the other play, he would have drawn the Whirlwind. It would have been game-ending.
Or so you think, and then Hotform just gets the oil and clears with Flurry, and then it's like, I spent everything for nothing.
Well, I think even if he does draw an oil there, it won't really be enough, because he has to use up all his resources. He would not only have to draw the oil, he would have to draw much more than that. He'd have to draw Sprint the very next turn, and he'd have to get a good combination of cards for that situation.
That is a fantastic point, Crib. Ostkaka is going to take this opportunity just to go really aggressive, set up effectively 2 boom types of attacks. You can either take the Frothic Berserker attack, or you can kill off the Dr. Boom.
Well, the set aside is a pretty good answer, though.
Yeah, or even just Blade Flurry SI is just as okay, too.
And Hotform without any sort of weapon buffs here, so he doesn't have the ability to Blade Flurry these off the board without using additional resource. He's just going to go ahead and clear the boom and do 1 damage, taking down Frothic as well, so able to clear off the board entirely.
Yeah, he is at 12 life, which looks pretty bad, but Ostkaka has no way to draw cards, but he does have a way to put a lot of patrons on the board.
Oh, I was really expecting like a Gromash to just end the game with the Inner Rage. It's like, I've seen this too many times.
Oh, God. I actually haven't seen that in a while.
Well, the Gromash Inner Rage since BlizzCon 2013, was it, Chris?
What? Oh.
Some PTSD
I don't know
there?
what you're talking about. I think we should focus on this game.
Yeah, you didn't go to BlizzCon that year, as far as I remember. Well, I mean, he does have some ways to try to go for Patron Flood, but at the same time, he's got like pieces of combos. Nothing really concrete.
Yeah, it seems a bit wasteful to use it. You're still at 23, you have an Armor Smith. You have a long way in this game if you pace yourself, but sometimes if you do too slow of a play, it gives the option for the Rogue to sprint, and then things accelerate by a lot.
Yeah, the Rogue deck is able to assemble some really powerful turns thanks to Sprint, things like Preparation, Tinker's Sharp Sword Oil, so you don't really have as much time as it might seem.
All right, well, with time running out both in the game and in the turn, looks like he's going to go for a nice little patron turn here.
He ends up going halfway, though. He doesn't want to use Cruel Taskmaster to fully commit in case the second Blade Flurry completely devastates him.
Well, the second Blade Flurry will devastate him.
Azure Drake with Blade Flurry, if he does just attack into the
Oh, he doesn't
original
need it anymore. That's an excellent
Yeah.
draw.
SIH and able to clear it off, and now he can trade off the patrons very effectively. And Ostkaka is essentially left with hoping he gets Gromash so that Cruel Taskmaster can finish the game.
Or some form of draw, or some form of stall. Yes, I mean, that's pretty good,
That's
too.
a stall.
Depth Bite is never bad. It's probably the most powerful card in the Grim Patron deck. He can clear off the Azure Drake, potentially develop a Shredder as well. He couldn't even just push for his opponent's face.
That seems a little bit too aggressive when you have Cruel Task. At this stage, I think the only way you're sealing out the game is the other Death's Bite or a Gromash. So
And you also
seems
don't
a bit
necessarily
unlikely.
have enough time to attack Death's Bite 3 times as well.
Yeah, and if you're drawing the Gromash, you have lethal anyway with Cruel Taskmaster. So you're really going off a 3-turn lethal off getting another death. It seems a bit unlikely. I like the slowing down of the game. Spell damage minions are so threatening when they're on the rogue side of the board. So it just seems like a pretty clear-cut situation here.
Also, in some ways, I like that Ostkaka chose to part ways with Inner Rage as opposed to Cruel Taskmaster. just on the off chance corner has been low step and denied the ability for Gromaj to get that hit range off.
All right, well, Ostkaka plays his entire hand here. He is looking just to tempo the Rogue as much as he can. And what does the Rogue pick up? It is going to be a backstab. It's really nice.
Big
so
draw
big.
Hotform there. And then, ooh, a sharp sword as well, so you can backstab it down the shredder. Let's see what's piloting that thing.
And you can just flurry down the remainder. That will do it. It's a board clear for Hotform, and Ostkaka. He is going to be hoping for the Gromaj.
He's still in a position where Grom could just end the game immediately, but now Hotform is the one in the driver's seat.
Potentially trying to survive. No.
Athletic pain, that's still a good draw.
That's a very good draw.
Yeah.
Both players are really looking for finishers or card draw, and Ostkaka gets some of that. He's going to get at least one card here, probably another one that's still going to be relevant in the game. And there's just a lot of cards that he can draw. We have to keep in mind, it's really the Rogue that has to finish the game quickly, as the Warrior has game-ending cards. The Rogue is going to need a combination of them.
Yes.
And with both players running out of steam, the Warrior is going to be further and further from dying, with the armor up being more effective than the dagger up.
The Rogue does have sprint that can draw at any time, which will allow it to potentially assemble those combos more effectively.
Oh, he was one card off, but he still does have activators for Grom. The only problem is, will those be the activators that he's looking for? Because I believe the modern patron deck only runs one cool Taskmaster. And so even if he drew like Inner Rage #2, he couldn't use it right now.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's at 11 health is so relevant because Gromaj, just in rage, only does 10.
Yeah, it's not only that, he's a...
This is two-turn lethal.
That is two-turn lethal. Hotform has 12 damage on the other side.
Is it possible to get sprint and 2 preps and 2 other cards?
Well, his opponent's going to be at 23, so he has to generate
another oil in there and an eviscerate. I think it's possible. I think Hotform can draw into a lethal situation. There's just so much potential damage with preparations involved.
But he needs sprint, though, in order to get that ammo, because if he just draws oil, for example, he might not even have an activator. Like, Sap wouldn't even be able to go off.
Right.
Ostkaka calculating every single possibility here about what to do. Like, how can he die to 2 cards? How can he die to sprint?
Actually, I don't think you can. I think the most damage Hotform can possibly do is 22, and Ostkaka can armor up to 23.
Wow. That would be just precisely enough to live, assuming that even goes Hotform's way, unless he has Harrison Jones to disarm him.
He needs the heal bot, actually.
No!
And preparation is not it.
Prep's not it? I mean, that's kind of what Rogue struggles with. Drawing these cards in that sequence is not going to do it.
A valiant effort from the Rogue deck, but it's going to have to pick a different fight.
Yeah, here comes Grom. He can wait no longer.
That's right. I would love Ostkaka just to hit the Lothep to show who means business, but he goes all face like a man. That's going to be a 2-0 lead for our Swedish player.
So Ostkaka is now down to just one deck. One game separates him from the 2015 HearthStone World Championship.
That is a pretty sizable lead. We've seen some amazing comebacks in tournaments so far, but it feels so tough to be in that position.
It's just really unlikely from Hotform's position to make that comeback, but we've seen it happen multiple times this tournament alone. So it's something that could certainly happen. But is he prepared to go through that long journey? Ostkaka is one of the most technically sound players in the entire pro Hearthstone scene. And for good reason, too. For so many months, Ostkaka was just a practice partner of some of the people that you see on stage there. He was just a person helping them train through matches. He was a person that would test things for them and then give these successful decks to players. There's also his teammates, and they would succeed and win tournaments. But this tournament is finally time for Ostkaka to shine, because he's no longer in the background of his peers trying to win instead of him.
Yeah, and he's showing exactly why those players come to him for his assistance. He has demonstrated that he is capable of playing at the absolute highest level.
Yeah, and that comes from just a lot of time investment and being very smart with how you utilize your time and the people you pick to advise you. And Ostkaka's done everything right, I think, throughout all of his tournament career. So it's so wonderful to see him highlighted in such a good way here today.
It's also such a unique lineup that people aren't expecting. The Rogue is very weak considered by many players, even ourselves included. We said Rogue is probably not going to make a biggest splash, and yet it's in the finals for both these players. And the second thing is the Patron Warrior was also declared somewhat dead. Just a couple weeks ago, the Warzone Commander was changed to only give charged minions +1 attack. Now it's here, and it's got a very good win rate for, I think it's only one game dropped the entire tournament
since the round of 16, actually. No, not just at BlizzCon, because in going from the 16 players to 8 players, there were 0 games dropped from the Grim Patron Warrior.
All right, so it's back.
Kind of.
Not
in the tournament scene, at least.
In the tournament scene.
The ladder scene is sometimes a little bit different, but it's great to see such wonderful decks highlighted here.
Sure.
Reports of Grim Patron's deck definitely highly exaggerated.
I had to force out that share just because I've had so many emotional, traumatic experiences losing the patient in the past, but not to this kind of deck, which fights definitely more honest in terms of the board, and this one is even harder to navigate. Without that out of the Warsong commander, Ostkaka was able to pilot this deck very effectively with less ability to shock his opponent and a very straightforward means. So a lot of people say that Patron Warrior is even harder nowadays compared to before, where it was considered the hardest deck to play.
I think one of the elements that really elevates it to another level of difficulty is the risk management is much harder than before.
That's true.
I feel like before, if things went badly, you could always just kill your opponent spontaneously, regardless of how much life they had. But now you have to manage your resources, you have to manage your timing much more relative to your position in the game. And establishing where you are in the game is really just the highest level of HearthStone play.
And one of the key things with the new Patron Warrior is it has to play an honest game. You know, it has to win through generally attacking with minions more than one turn. You know, we did see a huge Gramash hit there, but you don't have the Grim Patron Warsong Commander, Frothing Berserker here takes 70 damage in one turn. You have to manage your ability to defeat board wipes, things like Equality and Consecration that previously weren't really a factor.
And now we get to the point where it's even beyond the Patron Warrior and it's the Rogue. And if there's one deck that can also be swept in the other direction, it definitely feels like Rogue, because it's not only a deck that might have bad matchups, it might defeat itself with some of the draws that come awkwardly, like we saw with Hotform's hand. He had some good answers, but when he needed it the most, he started drawing some really weird spells that didn't do anything.
I mean, if we're looking at the decks these players have left, there's the Tempo Mage deck from Hotform, the Druid deck as well. Both of those can be pretty difficult matchups for Rogue.
Certainly.
And every single deck left in the tournament is a deck that can lose to itself.
Oh, certainly.
Well, we're about to find out. Can Ostkaka continue his rampage? No longer is he in the shadows of his teammates and his peers. He is in the spotlight, one game away from becoming the BlizzCon 2015 champion.
Both players with pretty good starts here.
Yeah, these are great opening hands. The Wild Growth, exactly what Hotform was looking for. Ostkaka has Violent Teacher, which is one of the very, very powerful cards to start generating a large board presence that's difficult for the Rogue to deal with.
Yeah, the Rogue, like you said, having that coin is just so big. Being able to get Violent Teacher out ahead on Druid is also really big. 5 health is a really good sweet spot because Druid usually needs to commit a couple of things, the hero power and some removal spells, or even minions that they don't want to trade favorably into it, but even a Shredder, for example, doesn't go into Violent Teacher well. So if Ostkaka can get ahead of his opponent on that, he'd be in a good spot.
What Ostkaka really wants to go with that Violent Teacher is a preparation and something like Sap or Eviscerate that'll allow him on the 3rd turn to play his Violent Teacher thanks to the coin, and then use his preparation and removal effect to just get ahead on the board and put the pressure on Hotform to respond.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, let's see how it starts here. Looks like it's going to be the Wild Growth, potentially a keeper follow-up if some little minion comes down follow. Double Violent Teacher with a few spells might not do the trick too well, though.
There's part 1 of the preparation Sap with Violent Teacher.
It depends. I mean, Hotform could hypothetically just draw spells, or, keeper the growth suboptimally, like just on curve here. Those kinds of cards don't really help too much, and Ostkaka might be given his most valuable resource, which is time against Druid. If he was able to get through the early game without taking too much damage, that is the point where a lot of Rogue players will be like, yeah, it's favored against Druid.
Right, but that's really the point. I mean, this is a game of pressure. Both players have a lot of burst, a lot of damage. Wow.
And not necessarily the minion that you want to prep Sap, but definitely going to allow Ostkaka to potentially set up for a really explosive thing. He may go for it.
Just a Violent Teacher here seems fine to me, though.
You can get 2 Violent Teachers on board.
That's right.
Sap.
Yeah, that just starts to be explosive. It allows Ostkaka to generate an enormous board, and Hotform picks up Big Game Hunter, not really what he's looking for here.
Well, Hotform is just going for it. Like I'm saying, this game just has to do with damage. Once one player is too low on HP, suddenly they have to play so defensively.
Yeah, and I mean, Ostkaka doesn't need that, though. He just picked up Backstab with Violent Teacher. That gives him the ability to backstab with getting tokens and then use preparation with either deadly poison to remove or something else. He also could choose to take it really slow. Preparation often is used to combine with sprint, but I think this is the time to seize tempo.
I think he might hold on to his preparation here. He use the Violet Teacher and backstab, get a minion right away, use his Violet Teacher to kill one of the keepers that was backstab.
Sure.
Then he still has a reasonably strong board presence and has preparation sprint with that sap to take care of a big minion like the Ancient of War waiting in Hotform's hand.
Yeah, I think if you use the preparation to be just only a little bit aggressively in the start, not sealing out the full tempo portion of the game in the opener, it might actually prevent you from being able to cast sprint at all against your high pressure deck.
Hotform really wants to find a swipe right here. That is a Wild Growth. Great card, not when you want it though.
Well, you might as well play it because nothing else is really going to make much of an impact this next turn.
Yeah, Ostkaka is going to be in a really dominant position though, because now that Violet Teacher has lived, which means he's going to get some really powerful turns in just a couple of.
In fact, he can prep sprint and play Deadly Poison afterwards if he wants.
Ostkaka is starting to really snowball an advantage in this game. Allowing that Violet Teacher to live is putting Hotform in a really rough spot.
And that is a board clear as well. It does set up, again, another very good swipe, but that would take Hotform almost his entire turn in order to deal with it. So that's one thing that the Rogue is excellent at, leveraging the board for a win. And with that Sharp Sword Oil draw, this could be potentially the last couple turns. It doesn't look that way, but with 30 health only against this kind of board,
just 30 health. How powerful.
I was actually thinking that if there was a prep there instead of an oil, it would have been game over instantly. Yeah. You would have played the Deadly Poison and prepped the Blade Flurry to clear the board.
And Hotform with the Ancient of War draw some more cards, trying to find something that'll get him out of this.
Wow, one card.
Oh no, another preparation.
Well, I mean, there's also something to consider is the Violet Teacher adding more tokens on, so the oil doesn't always.
Well, it could just be, yeah, okay. That might be a problem here.
It depends, though. I mean, one of those things that Ostkaka still might not care. He might just develop Farseer and kill off this, and end up going for a more slow approach as opposed to trying to kill him this turn.
Well, the attack here does seem to suggest that.
Yeah, he's going to be prep oil. And I mean, that just sets up a 2-turn lethal, unless he has lethal this turn, which I don't believe I see it.
Yeah, just able to sap the Ancient of Lore back in his hand. Has an enormous board presence.
All right, well, setting up for potentially the end here, but there is swipe in the hand of Hotform. That's what he's been looking for. That's what the Ancient of Lore was able to keenly draw.
Still, though, he's already down to 12 health, facing down that oiled up weapon already. He can only get rid of one of the Violet Teachers very easily.
Still a lot, though. I feel like really a big part of this game was the fact that the oil landed on a minion that could attack that turn.
Right.
As 3 damage is quite a bit in this situation.
I mean, he's 1 damage off right now. Just needs 1 more point for Ostkaka to find the lethal damage.
Fan of Knives could find him and eviscerate.
Knives could find him a Thalnos or an Eviscerate, I believe. Thalnos would do it.
That's right. Any additional damage, if he drew Deadly Poison as well?
Yeah.
Knives.
Ostkaka is very narrowly away from just being able to kill Hotform this turn.
The thing is, though,
keep in mind the burst of the Druid that could happen, right? I mean, some really bad things could happen on the other end. So it seems like he's going for a safe play here, and you can't really fault him for that because, you know, Druids have some crazy burst combinations.
All right, well, he's going to set Hotform to probably his last turn unless he can do something dramatic here. Because the problem is that even if you play Ancient of War, he can still Blade Flurry past it, and Ostkaka might be able to find the damage anyways. Looking at if maybe he can drop another minion or he needs the hero power. 5 health is enough to survive and eviscerate directly.
I believe that's it. I believe that
Azure Dragon's it.
That is it! Ostkaka will be your 2015 HearthStone World Champion. An absolutely dominant performance, climbing through the ladder, through tournaments, being able to overcome some of the most difficult decks with his unique lineup. A champion has emerged, and it is from Europe, the Swedish champion, Ostkaka.
The Europeans knew it all along.
See him up on the stage just now with Tice, you know, congratulating him as he goes through his fellow European Tice to get here. But it is an absolutely dominating performance in the finals.
absolutely thrilling journey has concluded here. Let's take a moment to recognize Ostkaka, go to the stage to hear some of his thoughts.
Ostkaka, you were the player that the pros said would win. You are the player who has been doing amazing things in Hearthstone since the beta. What does it mean to you to be on this stage as our 2015 Hearthstone World Champion?
It just means so much. I've been working in this the entire year, gathering points on the ladder. My mind's just overwhelmed right now. I barely even realized that I won the semifinal. It's just a long day of intense matches, but I'm super, super happy, of course.
Well, I want to give you the opportunity to address the fans assembled, everyone watching at home, and all your peers who are gathered in the wings to congratulate you.
It's the best event I've ever been to. Thanks for cheering, all of you.
And now to present you with your trophy, the President and CEO of Blizzard Entertainment, Mr. Mike Morhaime.
I'd like to award you this trophy on behalf of Blizzard Entertainment and the Hearthstone community. 2015 was such an awesome year for Hearthstone eSports, and you should be extremely proud of what this trophy represents. We're very excited to continue growing Hearthstone eSports in 2016, but for now, this is your moment, Ostkaka. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the community for supporting Hearthstone eSports in 2015. We can't wait to show you what we have in store for 2016, starting with DreamHack, the first point-giving event of 2016. Stay tuned for more info in the coming weeks, but for now, this is Ostkaka's moment. So please join me in giving him a round of applause for your Hearthstone World Champion.